This Week in Startups is brought to you by Blue Apron. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/twist. And Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter offer code TWIST at checkout to get 10% off. Our iTunes review of the week is from Thunderheart. If you're into technology and startups, you'd be wasting your time if you started anyplace else. Every week, you'll get the latest news on what's actually relevant.
Hey, everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. This is a show where we look at amazing new technologies, we meet the founders, we talk to angel investors, venture capitalists, and we just talk about where the future is going. Now, I saw a video, which I'm going to play in a minute, that was so astounding and so cool. And I said, wow, this is a product I've always wanted. I actually thought this would be a product maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I wondered why it didn't exist in the world. What was that product? Well, when I first saw drones flying around, quadcopters that everybody's buying, the DJI and all those kind of things, the Phantom, I thought, wouldn't this be great for security? Like, I would like to have around my house, if somebody hops the fence, a drone goes up and does a sortie, does a little mission, and sees who's out there. And if that happens, if it was a fox or if it was a wolf or a cougar, a mountain lion, we have these things in California, or if it was a burglar, I would get an alert on my phone, hey, there's somebody in the backyard, in the driveway, over the fence, and here's a video of it. And if that person saw the drone coming after them, hey, that would make them pretty scared. And I also thought when Donald Trump was like, hey, we're going to build a wall, I thought that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I mean, it'll get you elected president, I guess, but man, is that dumb. Why do we need a wall? What we need is drones. Just put a drone every mile and have them fly from 1 mile marker to the next and have them daisy chain back and forth, just looking for people, cameras, sensors. When they find somebody just gets on a dirt bike, a motorbike, and says, hey, you can't cross the border. That's it. Anyway, be that as it may, I was on the internet, and my friend Phil Libin, who's been on the show a couple times, he was the founder of Evernote. Great company. If you haven't used Evernote, go try it. He invested in Alex's company, Alex Pachikov. I got it right?
Yeah.
Now, Alex, you came up with this idea to create a drone security system for homes. Did you come up with this idea, or did Phil come up with it? Where did this idea come from?
Me and my co-founder came up with it.
Where were you when you had this idea? Give me the actual moment. Were you in the shower, going for a run? Were you sitting there saying, we need to start a company? What should we do?
Yeah. So I live in San Carlos, and my house
San Carlos.
In
California.
In California. Yeah.
Where is that?
20 minutes south of San Francisco.
It's right by the airport, right? Below the airport.
Below the airport,
yeah. You have the San Carlos airport there. That's where Surf Air comes in and out of. With those Pilates. Yeah. People are pissed off about that, by the way.
Doesn't bother me.
Those Pilateses, there's so many Surf Air. For people who don't know, Surf Air is the subscription, unlimited subscription for flights on Pilateses, like turboprops, back and forth. And they started flying them to this tiny airport in San Carlos, where you live. And now everybody's upset in Palo Alto because they're flying over their houses.
I don't know about everybody, except the people who get to fly in those things.
Are you a Surf Air member?
I am not.
Oh, okay.
One day.
When you get the Series A, you become a Surf Air member. Okay, so where were you when you had this? You're in San Carlos.
So my house opens up into effectively a giant forest. It's called the Pulgas Ridge County Preserve or something like that. So it's 350 acres of preserved land, and it's great. It's a wonderful view. It's a great place to hike. There's only one downside. You constantly hear noises. There's different things that happen in there. There's lots of different animals.
Sure.
There's mountain lions. There's coyotes. There's deer, obviously. And then there's also a lot of teenagers.
Yeah, those are animals too, by the way. Well, yeah. They're qualified.
They hang out there. They
drink beer.
Well, other things.
Make out sessions.
And nearby there is a youth correctional facility. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
kids.
Some of them run away from there as well. So almost every night, maybe not every night, but several times a week, you would hear a sound outside, and you just have no idea what it is.
Sure.
And I thought, okay, what can I do? I can run outside with a baseball bat,
Yeah.
that's probably a silly thing to do. I can peek out the window, you can sort of like look and cover your reflection and can't really see anything. But I've been a huge drone enthusiast. I have about 14 drones at my house. I keep buying them from, kind of how you feel, right? As soon as I started seeing them, I thought, hey, this is great. And so I thought, what if I just park one outside? I'll park one outside, and if something happens, I'll fly up and I'll take a look, and I'll just fly around. But it's not really practical. You can't really do that. The drone has to be powered on, it has to be charged, it has to be protected. You can't just have a drone sitting out and outside. And then you don't want to.
It's not designed for that function.
Exactly. It's not designed for that function. And you don't want to fly through a little screen at night, it doesn't have night vision. There's many problems with it. And so I actually, at the time, did not think of this as a company idea. I just thought this is a problem which I'm having and maybe other people have as well, just be able to investigate what's happening outside around your property. And maybe a month later, I ran into my old college roommate. He's an aerospace engineer with a lot of background and, working with aircraft, working with drones, working with the FAA, the whole thing. And I told him that I was thinking of starting a new company, and he was thinking of leaving where he was at, looking for a new company as well. And I told him this idea, and I was half joking. I just thought, wouldn't it be kind of cool if we had a drone that can do this? To my surprise, he didn't think I was joking. He took it quite seriously. And when I ran into him a few weeks later, he actually built an autonomous flying drone and a set of rudimentary sensors that would help guide it around. And at that point, when we had a conversation about this, it was much more of like, well, wait a minute. Like, how far away are we from this being a real thing? So we spent 2 months prototyping it, just bootstrapped, just kind of playing ourselves, putting something together that we can just, buy off the shelf and assemble it. And then we went out and we raised a little bit of money. So we raised a round from...
All right, so we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about what's the hardware profile here? Because we're sitting here in the studio, for those of you listening, and I see a little drone. It looks like any other commodity drone, but it's got a round bottom.
Yep.
I'm going to describe it for people because they can't see it, but it's got a round bottom that looks like the half of a baseball, about that size. The drone's about the size of a personal size pizza, not the pizza I eat like a Gavone, a huge, large pizza, but like a personal pizza from Domino's. And then he's got like a little scotch glass. It looks like a nice glass that you drink a scotch out of, that the round half baseball sized bottom of the drone would then rest into. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that also a charging station?
It will be.
So inductive charging from the base station.
Yes.
Now, the drone I see on the bottom seems to have a little slice in it with glass. Is that where the camera is?
Correct. There's actually 2 cameras in it. Oh. There's one camera, which is the main video camera that's gimbaled, so it goes up and down through this window.
Okay, gimbaled, yes.
Another camera, which is at the very bottom, and that's a downward-facing camera, and that gives us stabilization and landing assistance.
Okay, and then I see 4 blades. You call them blades on a quadcopter?
Propellers, I guess.
Propellers, sure. So 4 propellers. And like I said, it's about the size of a dinner, a little bit bigger than a dinner plate, but not much.
About a foot squared.
About a foot square. And I guess the rest is battery.
A big chunk of it is battery.
Yeah.
This top over here is important. The dome top is a place where we put a really advanced GPS antenna. It's called RTK GPS, Real-Time Kinematic GPS.
Real-Time Kinematic GPS, RTK GPS. That's the first time I've heard RTK GPS. I know about regular GPS, which is the military satellites, correct?
Yep.
And that puts you within, I think, 10 feet?
A little bit less, but yeah.
5 feet?
Yeah, give or take, yeah.
So how is this RTK different?
It's different in many different ways. The key aspect of an RTK GPS is that it works with a differential station, which is stationary. So GPS
a differential station.
Sorry, I don't
Speak
want to
English
throw a lot
over here,
of...
okay, Alex?
A ground station. A ground station.
Yeah. Something you plug into the ground.
So GPS has a peculiar quality that it's extremely accurate on average. So if you have it sit outside in the same space for 24 hours, it'll be much more accurate than if you were to just power this on and turn on the GPS. And so when you have this differential station, the ground station sitting outside, it knows precisely where it is, and it provides the error correction for the regular GPS, which then, like you mentioned, is about...
So you have ground waypoints. I'm just picking a term, but you have ground sensors that tell the Are the ground sensors your ground sensors, or are there ground sensors in the United States everywhere for this?
No. In this case, it's our ground station.
Got it.
So it's the housing where the drone lives.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it knows, and does it combine the ground stations with the GPS and the satellites?
Correct. So it uses the ground station in order to give it kind of an assistance. So it's talking
calibrate it, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a reference point, right?
So then standing we have also on the desk here a little bit of grass, it looks like, and those little lights that you might have going up your driveway, those solar lights that they would sell at the Sharper Image that never worked, but now they probably work, that they're kind of like spears. You put them into the dirt.
Yep.
They have a little light that goes down, and if you have a long driveway, you live in the country or whatever, they turn on at night automatically. They have a sensor. So it just looks like one of those driveway lights is what I would call it.
Yeah, it looks like a garden light.
A garden light.
It's a security sensor disguised as a garden light.
Okay. So what's in that, aside from the light, the solar, and the spike at the end to put it in the grass?
A bunch of things. So the most important is that this panel here houses 20 motion sensors.
Whoa.
So
So you're talking about the top of it basically looks like a disc, like a hockey puck,
Yep.
and that has 20 motion sensors around it.
Exactly. So
How far do those motion sensors reach?
30 feet,
30 feet.
at each direction.
So if something crosses the path of the motion sensor, what happens?
So the reason that there's 20 of them is because we don't want to just read when something crosses one of the sensors, because motion sensors are notoriously unreliable. You've seen those driveway lights just kind of go on and off, when leaves blow by. But because we have 20, we can rely on a sequence of them going off. And that gives us higher confidence that something is actually moving, direction in which it's moving, speed at which it's moving. And of the 20 lights, 10 point slightly up and 10 points slightly down.
Got it.
That gives us a height estimate.
So now you know something that's 2 feet above the ground just walked 7 feet in front of the six sensors, but it's not 8 feet tall or 7 feet tall.
Exactly.
So it's not a grizzly bear. It's probably a dog, raccoon, or something.
Exactly. Yep.
Fascinating. When we get back from this commercial break, we have the big reveal, Alex. We're going to tell everybody how much it's going to cost approximately.
We'll try.
When it will be available. And when we're going to put armaments on the Sunflower Labs home security drone system when we get back from this important message. Hey everybody, I want to tell you about a new product I've been using at my house and that I love. It's called Blue Apron. Yes, Blue Apron sends you a box with all the ingredients you need to make delicious food, to make a meal. It sounds a little weird at first, like, they're going to send you a box with dinner in it. It's not pre-cooked meals. No. This is portioned out recipes with a beautiful card with exactly the right amount. And what I love about this is when we were making General Tso's chicken, which I never knew how to make General Tso's chicken, but that's one of my favorite dishes. In fact, when I go for Chinese food, it's probably the number one dish I order. That and the walnuts with the walnut shrimp. I love that. But anyway, back to General Tso's. It had all the different ingredients perfectly portioned out. So following the recipe was easy. Then we made Sicilian pizza. My daughter went crazy. She kept saying, "Dad, you make the best pizza in the world. You're number one at making pizza." Again, the dough came prepackaged. Everything came with the perfect portion sizes, so it's affordable. There's a ton of variety. It's super flexible. It's easy, and they have a freshness guarantee. If you ever have any problems, they just solve your problems. You know how these direct-to-consumer products work. They have to make it work for consumers, or else consumers leave, or consumers don't tell their friend. So all they do is optimize to make it perfect and amazing and to delight you. And Blue Apron has been delightful for us in my household. And they are very much into high-quality ingredients. That's what makes the difference. They have partnerships with 150 local farms, fisheries, and rancheries across the United States. Their seafood is all sourced sustainably. And those standards were developed with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch. Beef, chicken, pork are from responsibly raised animals. The produce is sourced from farms practicing regenerative farming. It's so easy. I know Jackie made the catfish and potato latkes, which are one of my favorite. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. So here's your call to action. Go ahead and get your first 3 meals free. Your first 3 meals free with shipping. Go to blueapron.com/twist, blueapron.com/twist. You are going to love it. It's just delicious and it's easy. And I would say it takes 2/3 of the agony out of making dinner. So the only part that's left is that 1/3 of delightful time of assembling the meal, making it fresh for your family. Takes 10, 20 minutes, whatever it is. But you take out that arduous hour of preparing the proper sizes and measuring things and going to the store. It is easy and delicious. It tastes great. And I'm being sincere here. Listen, I'm using it now, and I use it for 2 or 3 meals a week, and it's wonderful. My daughter loves it. She helps us pick what we're going to order, and then you have this beautiful card that explains to you, like somebody's really working on the recipes. Whoever's doing the recipes at Blue Apron, thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. You really make it simple. That's what I love about it. It's so simple, so fresh, so easy. Go to blueapron.com/twist. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jason. You can follow the show at thisweekinstartups.com. And if you write a review of the show on iTunes, we will probably feature it on my Twitter handle in the show notes, and we'll just thank you and give you a high five. Producer Jackie may even read it at the top of the show. We really love getting reviews. We like you to tell us how great it is. Now, that's if you're giving us a 4 or 5-star review. If you hate the show, I want you to email billg@microsoft.com so Bill Gates understands why you hate the show. No, I want you to email jackie@launch.co if you hate the show. But if you like the show, write a review. It helps us. People see it. They go, oh, wow, people like the show. My guest today is Alex Pachikov. I got it right?
Yeah.
Good. Alex Pachikov is Alex Patch, P-A-C-H, on the Twitter. And he is the co-founder and CEO of Sunflower Labs. Sunflower Labs can be found on the internet, sunflower-labs.com. And he's backed by my good friend Phil Libin at Evernote, who now is at General Catalyst. Right, General Catalyst?
General Catalyst, yeah.
Yeah, which is a great venture capital firm. I know them well. And you had this crazy idea. You brought it to Phil?
I initially brought it to my co-founder, but then we brought it to Phil, yeah.
So tell me about that meeting. You say, Phil, I have an idea. I want to build a drone security system. And what's his initial reaction? The candid initial reaction. Was he like, this is dumb, or this seems like nobody would ever pay for it? I mean, hardware gets venture capitalists a little scared.
I came to Phil with a few ideas, actually.
Oh.
So I came to him with a few different ideas. And
he obviously loves you because you worked at Evernote. You were part of the founding team.
Yeah, I was there from the very beginning. We worked really closely together. I was one of the 8 or 9 people or so who basically ran the company.
Yep.
And Phil and I got along mostly well. All those years, But actually, no, we became really close friends throughout that time. And I came to him and I had a few different ideas, and I think his initial reaction, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think his initial reaction was that this one seems too hard. That some of the other ideas were a little bit simpler, maybe more direct, less risk, but this one seems a little bit too out there. But this is the idea that I fell in love with the most. This is the idea which I felt that I want. What
was your next best idea? Which one was like the next one as an entrepreneur? It's interesting when entrepreneurs have a couple of ideas. What was the one you said, I kind of like that one, but not good enough? Give me the general idea.
So there's a few. So I had one that I wanted to create a service which helps companies gauge how happy the employees are in the company.
I have an investment, 15-5, that does that.
Oh, great. I found a few other companies that do that as well. My approach to it was unique, which is why I'm not going to reveal it today.
Okay, because you may need that when you get to 100 employees. You can just deploy it in-house.
Might need to do that. So,
and you could spin it out.
So yes, I had an interesting way of assessing indirectly of how happy people are in the company, and I wanted to see if I can build that as a service. And actually, I think Phil was quite partial to that idea. I had another idea which had to do with a home gardening appliance that I talked to another friend of mine with. But I have no gardening or farming experience, and so that wasn't something that I was going to pursue.
And you also you own 14 drones. So let's be honest here. Your passion is with drones.
Yeah.
On your own.
Yeah.
With all this money you made selling your Evernote stock in secondary. I'm joking.
Well.
Maybe a little bit. Who knows?
A little bit.
It's nice to have an employee can sell a little bit in secondary. You bought 14 drones. You probably spent 10 dimes. You spent 20 grand on drones so far?
Personally? Yeah, I would say so. Easy. Yeah.
Wow.
Just a couple of the Phantoms, which I have, are like $1,500 a piece.
Yeah. So getting back to.
But to answer your question,
what was his back to that? What was his initial reaction? He didn't like it. He liked it. He needed to be convinced.
I think he needed to be convinced a little bit initially, as we talked about it. But as we kept talking about it, what became more obvious is that this was an intersection of a new technology, which is up and coming, and a new way to use this technology in a market which is growing. Basically
home automation,
drones, home automation, just generally smart home, and then also a market which is ripe for disruption. Market of professional home security, which effectively hasn't innovated, hasn't done anything interesting, yet is a huge and lucrative market. And this intersection, I think, is what got Phil and other investors excited, because you can see how a lot of the companies which, take Uber, right?
Yeah.
So like Uber is a company which is doing something at the time was doing something kind of crazy, but in a market which is huge and lucrative and basically hasn't moved. And so it gives you this chance for disruption.
Because home security has been ADT, and a bunch of upset people signing huge contracts with them and not getting great service. I mean, at least that's what I kind of felt.
It's a universal need. Everybody feels they want to have it. Yeah. Everybody ends up looking out there to get something. There's a handful of companies which own majority of the market. They all have extremely low reviews if you look at Yelp or something like that in terms of experience. And if you just look at the state of technology, it hasn't changed. It's in the last 30 years. It's hard to spot the difference between what a home security system was 30 years ago and what it is today.
Let me do this. I'm going to play the video that you sent me of the screen capture from November 9th. I'm going to hit play right now. Tell me what we're seeing.
Okay. So this is a test flight that we're doing. So this is my house.
Okay, right.
And we're basically simulating somebody who is at my front door that shouldn't be there. And we're telling the drone to go and explore it.
All right, we're going.
So this is one of the earliest test flights that we've done.
Yep.
But this is a full system working. This is the sensors, this is the drone, this is autonomous
This is
flight,
your house?
This is my house.
Oh, yeah, I can
house.
see the mountain behind.
Yeah, and that's a forest with all the crazy teenage animals.
And on the left, we're seeing your house, and we're seeing the drone flying over your roof.
Yep. So you're seeing an iPad screen of our internal demo application. So you have a map. You're going to see the drone on the map. You see the little dots. These are the sensors. On the right, you see the live streaming video that's coming out, and below it, you see the live telemetry data being streamed from the drone.
Okay,
The customers aren't going to see all of that stuff. That's going to be more an advanced feature, but effectively the map and the live video are essential.
So it knew that this person was at the front door because they passed one of the garden light sensors.
Yep.
Pointing at Nelson.
It fired itself up.
Yep.
And does it know through computer vision that that's the human, or does it just go to where the sensor told it to go?
Right. No. So right now we're not doing computer vision from the camera of the drone.
Right.
We're just doing the analysis from the ground sensors.
Got it. So it knew the ground sensor was
Okay, point to is good.
set off, so it goes there and videotapes.
Return to
But
high.
it's not following that individual around right now.
Well, the sensors follow the individual. So the
Got it.
sensors can track that somebody has moved from one place to the other. And what we're doing in the video is simulating that the event has moved, where we point to the other guy, and then and the drone flies. The important thing here is that the entire flight is fully autonomous. The drone takes off autonomously. It flies in such a way where it keeps the house in view as opposed to flying and then turning around to look at it. So it's flying and rotating in the air to maximize the amount of time that you get to see the target and minimize the time that you're looking away from your property at your neighbors.
Got it. So smart.
And when it flies back, it does the same thing. So if, in that video, you see when it flies back, it's always pivoting around the center of the house just to give you that
Because it knows
focus.
that's the important object.
And it's one of the selling points for us, because security cameras that you can install on your home give you the exact wrong angle of
Lights
what you want
off.
to see, right? Because they're mounted on the home they're trying to
Touchdown.
protect.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Here, you actually get the ideal vantage point because the drone is always looking at your
total
house
sense
from a different
to
point
me.
of view.
So looking at this is for homeowners or businesses.
And we're going to initially target homeowners or renters, actually. The ownership is less relevant because it's easy to install, easy to take away. But single
So
family
how many
homes.
of these sensors will I need for an average home that, let's say, is a half acre to an acre?
Well, half acre to an acre isn't an average home.
Okay.
For an average home, probably a fifth of an acre. 4 sensors should be sufficient. You place them at the key areas where you would need to have some detection. One by the front door, one by the side gate, one on the back, one on the side, or
All
something.
right. So for the baller estate, that's a half acre or to an acre.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Maybe
8 of them? 10 of them?
8 to 10.
Got
Yep.
it. So those sensors probably cost $100 a piece. I'm guessing something in that range. So it's not going to be that expensive to put up. I know drones cost $500 to $1,000. So what are we looking at here? $1,500, $2,000, $3,000? I know you haven't built it yet, but it's got to be in that range.
So,
right?
so we haven't announced the prices not because we're keeping them secret, but because we have a lot more work to figure out what they should be. Our target is to offer this at about $1,500 to $2,000 range.
Wow!
But we want to offer it as a subscription.
I was about to say that. Like this would be amazing if it was just $50 a month.
Yeah.
Or $100 a month.
Or in between those, but yeah.
And if it was $75 a month, you would be able to hit profitability sometime in year 2 or something.
Yep.
And now there are companies like Alarm.com, I believe, that you can actually have armed response and alert them independent of having like ADT or something like that. There are these back-end companies. So if it saw something, would it be able to fire up armed response if you had that option and then give the video in real time to the armed response?
Right. So that's actually a really interesting subject, and it's quite complex. One of the main issues conventional home security companies suffer from are false positives. So the police effectively...
I know, because you know why? When I was in LA, I had 2 false positives. You know what happens when you get a false positive in LA?
Come.
No.
They fine you.
They fine you.
Yeah,
It costs you $150.
Yeah. Or they don't come, which I'm not sure which one.
I'll tell you the great story after the next break of like of the police coming to my house for a false alarm. But keep going.
So a lot of police departments they can't stand home security monitoring services because 95 to 99% of the calls are false alarms. And there's a study I can send you a link to that is the effect. I spoke to a sheriff of San Mateo County about this specifically. He told me that if they get a call from a monitoring system, they set it as priority 3. And I asked what that means, and he says, yeah, that basically means like if you happen to be driving by. But there is a way around it. A way around it is called verified response. And this is typically a homeowner that needs to confirm that something is indeed happening, and they need to be sure, so they need to have video of it or something. There isn't an easy way, as far as I can tell, to stream the video over to the police. But if you are to confirm that you have video of an intrusion in your house over the phone, then the priority rises much higher and the chance of somebody coming out is much higher. So the system we're building it's much more essential to keep the owner in the loop. So while we can outsource it to a monitoring service and pay whatever, $5, $10 a month for that extra feature, I don't actually think that solves the problem that the owners want. I think that what the problem that the owners want is that if they're not home, they actually do want somebody to come out. And the best way to do that is to be the most convincing evidence, present the most convincing evidence to the police in order for them to come out.
All right. When am I going to be able to buy this?
You can reserve it now.
I can.
You can literally reserve it today on our website.
$200, what?
$25.
What?
$25.
Too cheap.
So, well, it's a reservation. You know,
Okay.
you don't.
Did you announce this yet? Or?
It's announced. It's on our website.
When did you announce that?
November 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got a couple thousand people, maybe?
Not quite. But
Okay.
yeah. But we have. We
After
have
this show, I bet you get another 1,000.
I'm looking forward.
So you'd be the signature. You could be like the signature 10,000.
Special edition. Yeah.
Special edition.
You get the first
I want to be in
gold-plated.
the beta so bad.
Yeah, and so but that's the point. The point of the reservation is to get people who are truly excited about this early on and for them to sign up and to basically give us some confidence these people are for sure. Then of those people, we're going to select the participants for our first beta. And we hope to launch our first beta in about 9 months from now. And at that point, we would like to get the response from people, see how it's actually going. And after that, we launch a second beta. I guess maybe I should call
Let me
it
ask you
first one
another
alpha.
question, which I'll have you answer when we get back from this commercial break. But I'm curious if the system could run a flight every hour for me from a certain time to a certain time. Don't answer yet. From a certain time to a certain time, just so I have the peace of mind that it went out every hour and did a sortie. And I also want to know when you're going to put a stun gun or paintball gun on the Sunflower Labs home security system. And I will tell you the story of the armed response to my house in Los Angeles that went terribly wrong when we get back on This Week in Startups. Let me take a moment to thank Squarespace for, first of all, making amazing software. I was just working on one of the new projects I'm working on. You may have heard of television show. And we had to make a website, and I just went on to Google Domains, and I was buying a domain over at Google Domains, and boom, you could just, when you're setting up your Gmail, fire up and launch Squarespace. I guess they're partners now. And I was able to fire up a gorgeous website in literally minutes, and it looked like we spent $25,000 making it. It looks professional. It's intuitive and easy to use. No coding is required. And they use state-of-the-art tech. It's super secure. It's super stable, and it's trusted by millions, some of the most respected brands in the world. We, in fact, use it for all of our events and conferences, and you can start your free trial today. No credit card is required. And you'll get a free domain name if you sign up for a year. I'm an idiot. I did it wrong. I signed up at the wrong domain place. I didn't know that I would get a free domain. I got to go back and do that next time. If you decide to sign up for Squarespace, if you do decide that you're going to sign up for Squarespace, which I'm sure you will, just use the promo code TWIST and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. It is an amazing, amazing product. It's super easy to use, and they keep adding features to it, which is one of the great things about the software as a service movement. They keep getting more people loyal to the product. They keep being able to hire more product managers, developers, and researchers to figure out what to make next. And boom, they make amazing product, and they keep the price the same. So things are getting better and better over there at Squarespace. I love the product. Go ahead and follow at Squarespace. All right, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. You can follow the show at TWI Startups on the Twitter and on the Instagram. Okay, Alex, when we left you, we were talking about Sunflower Labs' subscription service for drone security. I love this product. I will be your first customer. I'll be in the beta even. And I was asking you about, could it do a sortie? I think that's the right term for like a mission. Could it do a mission if I said, hey, every hour I just wanted to do a videotape of my property? Would it be able to do that as well, or does it only do it if it crosses a path? Because I want to basically know, peace of mind-wise, that I did this little thing every hour. Possible or no?
Absolutely possible. Yeah. We actually, one of the reasons we want to create the system, the reason we built it the way we did is because we want it to be more than just a security system. We want it to be also something that's useful and fun around your home.
Oh, yeah, time lapse. You could do a time lapse.
Exactly. Oh, you're just one step ahead.
Well, when you hear 20 startup pitches every week for 10 years,
I know, right?
You kind of understand the feature set.
But for example, you want to take a look at your garden. You want to see a garden grow over time. Take a picture every day at noon. Align them nicely. Get a good time lapse, or you have some friends over. You'd like to take some pictures of your friends, or you want to maybe take a look at the gutters on your roof or something like that.
Yeah.
Why not? Like this
spy
thing
on your friends, spy on your neighbors.
Yeah.
I want to catch my neighbor cutting my trees.
It wouldn't be spying on your neighbors. It's geofence to you.
That's right. But that actually makes it a lot less complicated to have autonomous. You couldn't send an autonomous drone over your friends' houses.
Exactly.
But you can send an autonomous drone over your own property, correct?
Yeah. Easy to map out. Hopefully your property doesn't change very much. You're not going to add a story to your house. You're not going to plant a giant redwood. Well, maybe. But, if you do, let the system know.
Yeah. I had a little thought there. We were talking about getting the video to the police. What would be really good is if there was an armed situation, if it was able to send a short URL to a group of people on a CC list or on a group message, that would be amazing. Just, hey, if I had my local sheriff's department or whatever, and I had their, or my neighbors, and I had and it just shot them a URL, they could click it, go to a hashed URL that only exists for a couple of hours, and see that video.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to get the footage to the police or to whoever in the easiest way possible. Unfortunately, as far as I know, you can't text 911. Maybe you can you?
I don't think you can text 911 yet.
Maybe they're on WhatsApp, so we should look into that. Yeah.
It's
Facebook
definitely something that's emerging now.
But absolutely, that has to exist, right? That has to exist very soon because
you raised what, $2 million for this?
A little more, 2.1. Yeah.
Is that enough, candidly, for a hardware startup to get to market, or is that just get you to prototype phase?
Yeah. This is $2 million gets us to demonstrate that this is a feasible product, that's a practical product. We can demonstrate that technically that we can achieve what we're doing. But in order to get this product to market, we will be raising additional capital in order to go into production.
Seems to be a hardware company in 2017 needs a little bit more money than you've raised. I don't know if it's much more. What do you think a hardware company needs to get to market? In other words, to have it on shelves at the Apple Store or whatever. What do you think if you were advising founders to get on Apple shelves, to get in the Amazon store, to have inventory? What's the total amount you need, you think? Ballpark.
I mean, it depends on the product, but I'd say anywhere between 5 and 15 million is probably what you would need as a hardware company.
See, I agree with you because I've angel invested in a bunch of hardware startups, and they're always chasing their tail. They're always just, the fabrication of this is expensive, right?
It's difficult, and it's not. My background is software. If we have a crashing bug, where we started, we have a crashing bug with this.
Yeah,
that's a really crashing bug.
Right, and once you start manufacturing them, you have a problem. This actually, I'm going to have Jamie Siminoff from Ring.com on, which is in a related space. Yeah. And when he did his first doorbell, it was called Doorbot, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he told me the reviews were so bad and there were so many problems and they had to reissue the product that they actually, maybe they didn't have to change the name, but they went with new branding because then they could have all new fresh reviews in the App Store, et cetera. But you really need to be careful releasing a product like this.
No, it's absolutely true. I love Ring. I love the name Ring,
I love Ring. I have two rings.
Much better than Doorbot.
I love Ring.
And yeah, I absolutely wish them the best of luck. And I watch that space because I'm obviously going to be learning those same lessons, either the hard way or hopefully.
Well, the thing that Ring has that I think is very special is you can share the video instantly. So if somebody, let's say, steals a package, I could tweet it, put it on YouTube, Facebook it, and message it to all my friends.
Yep.
Or put it on my next door group. So what's happening is, in a neighborhood where I live, there were some of these like snatch and grab Amazon, boxes being stolen.
It's called porch piracy.
Porch piracy, I love it. So there's porch piracy going on, and what happened was people started sharing the links. They caught the guys. It was a bunch of school kids who were just after school would drive around and they would play Amazon Bingo. They'd open it up and hope there was a laptop in there or something.
It's kind of a whole new generation of smart home security, which allows things like this.
But it's that sharing, that instant sharing off of Ring.com is so clever because, and then they made an ad campaign about it, and they've now. I went into Nextdoor. And the Nextdoor groups are so active. It's an amazing startup. We actually, note for Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie, where's the founder of Nextdoor? How come we haven't had him on? He's brilliant. I think that's a really cool concept, is that instant sharing. Okay. I promised I would tell the story of the security.
Please.
And I have two of them. This is how crazy alarm systems are. So one night, my wife sets the alarm incorrectly. You have all different alarm settings. And it was a silent alarm. So a silent alarm goes off. This is years ago. So ADT, armed security, comes to our house in Los Angeles. But we don't hear the alarm go off. Nor do we get the phone call, because they call you to check, did the alarm go off or whatever. So silent alarm goes off, phone doesn't ring. All of a sudden, my wife wakes me up, Jason, there's somebody at the door. I look, I see a flashlight looking in the windows, and I hear the door shaking. I'm like, oh my God. Now I'm in my tighty-whities, got my big fat gut hanging out. This is a bad visual for people. I say, get in the bathtub, lock the door, lock the other door, and I go out, and I tell her, call 911. I grab a steak knife. I position myself, because I can tell the person's going around the house. The person's going around the house checking each door for vulnerability. I take the knife. I position myself because I know he's coming around the corner. So I go to the corner of the house. I open the door very quietly. And I'm on one knee with a steak knife. Not a steak knife, like a chef's knife. And I am going to eviscerate this mofo coming around the corner trying to rob my house. And I hear him coming and I see the flashlight. When I tell you my adrenaline, I'm a pretty calm guy. I worked on an ambulance. My adrenaline is like on 11, and I'm ready to stab a guy. And right before the guy comes around the corner, you know what I hear? Take a guess. ADT is the homeowner here. I'm like, yes, I'm the homeowner, and I give him the code word, everything. He comes around to me in my tighty-whities with a knife in my hand. Put the knife down. He's got his gun drawn. Or he's got his hand on his gun, rather. I'm sorry. He's got his hand on his gun. And I said to him, I said, what the hell is going on? Why didn't you call? He said, we called 10 times. I said, how do you call 10 times? I go into my wife. My wife comes out. She goes, oh, I unplugged the phones because it would wake up the baby. I said, oh my God. You realize I almost got killed. The ADT guy almost got killed. You can't unplug the phones and you put the silent alarm. I went crazy.
Yeah.
This is a true story. You got to be careful in this business. Let me tell you something, Alex. This is going to be, your startup has to take this really seriously. You have a higher level of responsibility as a security company, don't you?
Hopefully we're not sending out anybody with a gun. Per your earlier question, the drone is not going to be armed. But in your situation here, maybe it would have helped. Maybe you would have sit
that's right. I would have seen the video of the guy in ADT.
And see that there's, ADT car up front and a guy walking around back. So
this was a scary moment in my life. You want to hear the next scary moment?
All right.
I can't believe I have two of these stories. So again, this is years ago at the LA house. We had like a 3-car garage. One of the garages was converted by the previous owner into like a little modest gym. Like a little bit bigger than a walk-in closet, like a small one. But I got a treadmill in there. I watched the Knick game. My daughter was very young at the time, would come in, she'd play, she'd watch the Knick game with me, I'd be on the treadmill. Once again, I'm in my shorts with no shirt on, my big fat gut hanging out. I was 25 pounds heavier, if that's even possible for you to imagine. And there's a little circle on the side of the wall with a button in the middle of it. And I was always wondering, what is that for? To cut off the AC? So I press it. I've been living in the house for 2 or 3 years. I didn't know what it did. It was a panic button. Previous owner had put a panic button in. The alarm goes off. I go to the alarm panel. I turn the alarm off. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I guess it's like a button to set the alarm off. I didn't think it was a panic button. I get back on the treadmill. 8 minutes later, I look out into the garden, and there are 4 police officers coming around the corner with their guns out, walking in formation like a military operation. Alex, when I tell you the adrenaline goes to 11, the guy's pointing his gun at me. He says, hands up. I put my hands up. I said, my daughter's in here, blah, 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 blah. I am the homeowner. He's like, okay, come on out. I come out. I said, my daughter's right there. And he starts asking me these questions. I said, you can clear the house. My passport's in my dresser. Here's where it is. You'll find out the homeowner. He's like, why did you hit the panic button? I said, I didn't know it was a panic button. I moved into the house. I said, how long you live here? I said, 3 years. He goes, you never knew what the button was for? I said, I just saw it actually. It was just in the corner. I never even noticed it. He's like, that's the panic button. We got a panic alarm, whatever. I got a $250 bill for that one.
Wow.
But I think a panic button is a really cool thing. That's one of the things you got to think about, Alex, for your security thing is the panic button. When something goes wrong. But do you think when the drone flies over somebody's head, that'll be a deterrent? Because that would scare the heck out of me.
I think so. I need to test this theory. But I'm pretty sure that a drone coming out and taking a look at what you're doing is similar to a security guard walking out.
Yes.
Or a dog or something, a guard dog.
Does it have a floodlight on it? In other words, if it knows, would it be able to light up the area? Because then if it's like a helicopter putting a light on you, then I'm really scared.
So it does have 2 lights on the front, but these are also lights. And so all the ground-based lights turn bright.
Oh, they turn brighter?
They can start flashing. They can do all sorts of things.
Now,
so
can it do a little beeping or anything like that?
They can, yeah. So they can beep. They can alert you. They will have some pre-recordings in it, so some noises.
Oh, Alex, that's good.
One of them is, I'm still trying to get the rights for it, but one of them is the Darth Vader breathing. I think that will basically...
No, I think what it should say is, it should go beep, beep, alerting homeowner.
Yeah.
Beep.
Yeah.
Beep. Alerting homeowner.
And it can also play ultrasound. So if we're trying to scare away an animal and not you, then instead of waking you up and sending a drone, it's just a little high-pitched noise that basically scares away raccoons and deer.
I got to tell you something. I have an idea for you, Alex. I think the ground station itself is a product.
Yeah.
Sell me the ground station first.
Yeah,
just with the alarm going off. I just want that. Forget the drone.
So
the alarm, does that product exist in the world, like alarm stations in the ground?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay, this might be the best thing to come out of this episode. If you made it a 2-part launch where the ground station came out first and just alerted people to it, you could set that thing up in 10 frickin' minutes.
So this is a great. So we've debated this point.
Internal. Take me to the debate.
With Phil.
Very much
with
take
Phil.
me through it.
And very much the two components are a product in their own right. You can't have the drone without the sensors because the drone needs to be guided where it needs to go. But we really feel that the sensors are a product in their own right.
They are.
But to be honest, the excitement is all in the actual flying camera.
This is where you're wrong, Alex.
Well, let me ask you a question. Would you have me on the show if I only came with really, really smart garden lights?
Okay, fair enough. Maybe no. So I think but I'll tell you something. For me, 90% of the value is going to be the garden thing.
Yes.
I believe, because I have actually looked because I have a little, I'm a little bit interested in security myself because, listen, I'm not low profile. Sometimes some kooky people have gotten interested in me. I had a stalker a couple times. Some weird stuff has happened. And I would like to know if something's on the property. I don't even need a camera. In fact, why doesn't the base station have a camera in it? That could be really interesting.
Cameras are really power hungry. And
that makes sense.
If it's just a simple light and a set of sensors, very low power, the solar panel can basically power it through. If you're putting in a camera, now you're putting in maybe multiple cameras.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, it doesn't last very long.
But here's the thing. If you do that, did Phil say do it as a 2-part rollout?
No.
As an investor, I would be absolutely saying get the sensor out first, because you can get the sensor out in the next 6 months probably. Get that going. Sell a heck ton of them, and then when the drone's ready, that's part 2. 9 months from now, you get your sensors, you start playing with them. Another 9 months, you get your drone. Because the drone's going to take a lot more Q&A. The sensor's going to take no Q&A.
Well, both products are complex, and we may stagger the launch as we get closer. However, for me personally, I want the drone.
That's the thing about being a founder.
I want the drone to fly around my house, your house, and others. And I think that to me feels like a complete product, a futuristic product, something which I'm proud to build and something I'm proud to have.
Alex, I think this is brilliant.
Thank you.
I don't throw around the word brilliant lightly. I think it's a total game changer. I think it's $1 billion company. I think if you get this right, you put ADT out of business. I think this is better than ADT. You could leave your doors unlocked. But the point is, if you catch people on the perimeter, they're never going to break the window. I want 2 drones on my property, and I want one with a net.
Yeah.
What is the story with you must have looked into this and had this discussion. I mean, it's a little bit facetious to say arm the drone. But did you think about countermeasures, let's leave it at that, for the drone?
Of course I thought about it. But there are many problems with it. Both legal, practical, aerodynamic problems, and so on. So we don't think that shooting anything or deploying a net is actually going to be useful to anybody. And the potential of it going wrong.
Well, of course. You can't arm a drone, right? You're legally not allowed to arm a drone.
Yeah, you're not allowed to arm it.
Is there a law specifically about drones and arming them, or robots and arming them? I think there is.
You mean like the law of robotics, where the robot should never harm a human?
Well, no, that's RoboCop. So I agree with that. The Prime Directive, of course. But
the Prime Directive, right?
Did the FAA or did anybody come up with you should not put a gun on? Because there was somebody who did
I think there is.
I think there is because I know somebody put a.
I think that law has to do less with the drone and more with the gun.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you can't put a gun. You can't have a gun fired not by a human.
Exactly, yeah.
But there's a video online from a couple of years ago where somebody put a paintball gun on a drone.
And then went to jail immediately after.
Did they?
I think so, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't do that.
Well, there are other countermeasures that could happen. Like when you could put a laser on somebody, that would scare the hell out.
Oh, so my co-founder, Chris, has the best idea.
Okay.
So we don't need to kill anybody. All we do is we have a laser pointer on the drone that points at the target and just starts counting down from 10. That's all it does. That's all it does.
10, 9.
I don't think we'll ever get to 1, but I'd like to see the guy who stands there.
You know what? Your partner's pretty smart, because if the garden sensor lights actually counted down to an alarm, calling the authorities in 15 seconds, 14 seconds, 13 seconds, the raccoon will be like, whatever. But if it's a human and they heard that, they're going to run for the hills.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the first moment you see a drone, if you're doing something around the property you shouldn't be, you're not going to continue.
You know what I like? I like the idea of dropping a net, or we're probably 10 years away from that. But they also, when you steal money from a bank, if you're a bank robber, they have those ink packs on it that blow up.
Yeah. Well, the glitter bomb, right?
The glitter bomb. Yeah, she mentioned that before.
Yeah, so you would just say that, we didn't harm the person, but, what did the suspect look like? I don't know, but he's covered in glitter. What are the chances there's another guy like that?
Alex, when you have a brilliant idea, I can tell you when you have a brilliant idea, when everybody who hears about it comes up with 100 ideas of how to improve it or iterate on it or just fun stuff like that. When I heard the idea for Uber, literally people were like, well, you could also deliver stuff. You could also do that. I mean, it's just like poor Travis was and Garrett were bombarded with all the ideas on their roadmap. No. Everybody had every idea.
And I'll tell you what's really pleasant to me. when I heard your intro to this and
Yes.
you explained the product, and I didn't tell you anything to this point, and listening to somebody else tell what the product's supposed to do, spot on to what you're actually thinking, like that gives me confidence that I'm onto something.
Well, that's called the telephone game.
Correct.
And it works for startups, which is you ask your customers to describe your product,
Yes.
and you know who did it really well was Square. If you go to Square's website, it knows your geolocation. Instead of having Square, in the early days, Square would explain to you what their product did. Then what they did was they taped people who used the product, and they said, hey, Jake's Cupcakes. And they got Jake to go on camera and said, Jake, explain to us your cupcakes and why you use Square and your cupcake. And they went to the cupcake store. Yeah. And then they would say, well, I use it because I don't have to pay a fee and the machine's free. And I used to pay $50 a month for my machine. It was real money.
Yep.
And people believe that over Square telling them.
Yeah.
And they geo-targeted it. So if you were in Los Angeles, you got Jake's Cupcakes. If you were in San Francisco, you got Susie's. And if you were in Seattle, you got Bobby's. So you saw a local person. And they said that made things go through the roof. All right, listen. We could talk all day. You need to get back to work. I want this product. The world wants this product. Alex, continued success with Sunflower Labs. Go to sunflower-labs.com and put down a $25
reservation.
It's refundable, no problem. No, wait a second. You didn't do a Kickstarter for this?
We did not.
Why not?
A Kickstarter kind of has a bad reputation lately.
Why does it have a bad reputation?
I've bought a lot of stuff from Kickstarter, and I'd say 9 out of 10 of those things either don't arrive or they're not in a good shape. And the reason for that is because you end up not getting enough money from Kickstarter, and you've already overpromised, and you don't really have anything to show.
That's exactly what happens.
So I think the better approach for us is to raise capital, to develop this, and then to actually take people's money when we're ready to ship them something.
Now, would you consider? I agree with that. I do think that people who order on Kickstarter think about it like Amazon rather than I'm supporting the development of a product. So you're right. That's something they struggled with. But what do you think about doing 30 minutes before it happens, like 30 minutes before, 60 days before you're ready to ship, doing a Kickstarter at that point so that the window between when it's shipped and it comes out.
So you can do that as some additional capital just to kind of, to fund for marketing and so forth. That's smart.
All right. Yeah. So continued success. Everybody go to sunflower-labs.com. Thank you so much, Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie, for getting this set up so quickly. Congratulations to Phil Libin, who's just starting as a venture capitalist at General Catalyst. I hate you, you bum. You got a hit already. I think it's $1 billion company. God darn it. Phil starts becoming a venture capitalist. He hits a unicorn in his first shot out. Are you his first investment?
I'm a second. Yeah.
Gosh darn it. Yeah. Hey, Phil. Oh, by the way, thanks for sharing the deal flow, pal. Thanks for getting me in that round. Not on. I can't even get. My friends don't even introduce me. Is this round still open? Is there no way I can weasel my way in here? I don't know.
Yeah, we can talk.
All right, we'll talk after. And now you guys understand why I do This Week in Startups. It's my way of weaseling my way into rounds that have already closed. On the next episode, Jason invests in the first round of Airbnb. All right. We'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Satya Patel from Homebrew, a seed stage venture fund based here in San Francisco. We lead a very small number of investments each year, take a board seat, and work really closely with the founders to help them build the companies that they envision. And I'm going to hopefully help you understand how to get from seed to A today. Why is this particularly relevant now? About 20% of companies that have raised A's in the last few years, or seeds in the last few years, are now going to be able to raise A's. And that number is going down. So the battle for the A dollar is getting more and more brutal. Hopefully what I share with you today will be helpful. Just to give you some sense, in our first fund, which we raised about 4 years ago now, we're batting a little over 92% in terms of companies that are successful in raising A rounds versus seed rounds that we lead. So hopefully this framework for thinking about things will be helpful, and hopefully it's right. We're going to do a little bit of choose your own adventure in terms of depth in topic areas. So how many in the room have raised seed rounds before? Have already raised a seed round? How many have not raised any money for their company? And how many have raised an A or later? Okay, great. So we'll spend equal time on seed and A, and hopefully give you some ideas around how to get money in your bank. So this is the typical path to financing. It's pretty simple. If you want to raise seed money, it's definitely based more on the promise than the reality of your company. Series A, you kind of have to have product market fit. And Series B, you have to demonstrate scale. And this is kind of the simple rubric for figuring out when and where you should raise money. We're going to talk about each of these at the seed level and Series A level in depth, and what we believe are the keys, what I believe are the keys to being successful with those financings. The seed is all about belief, because again, there's not much that you have to go on beyond the team and the idea. And from our standpoint, belief is really the idea that you get an investor to irrationally believe in your potential success. We refer to that as emotional resonance, right? This idea that you've connected some way with the investor that has nothing to do with the reality of your business. And so there are really three keys to emotional resonance from our standpoint. The first is the people, right? You've got to be able to tell a compelling story about your team and why your team is best suited and actually motivated to go after a particular problem that you're solving. And sometimes that comes from the founding story. Sometimes it comes from the fact that your team has worked together before. Oftentimes it comes from an insight you have about the market as a team that nobody else has. But there's got to be something about the team that makes the investor feel like they want to put their sweat and reputation behind you. The second is the potential. Why does it matter? What impact is this going to have on the world? Why should the investor believe that they want this problem to be solved or they want your solution to exist? And much of that is driven by the mission of the company, which I think a lot of founders don't spend enough time on. We always ask the question, why are the founders doing what they're doing? A lot of that is the connection between the people and the opportunity, founder market fit, as we refer to it. And so you've really got to be able to tell a story around product market fit in order to get people to kind of build resonance with you. And then finally is proof, data. But you can forget about that, because at the seed stage, you don't have it. So you got to focus on those first two things in order to get the seed round done. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting your investors to believe in something irrationally, getting that emotional resonance. So that's the first step of the typical financing path. And I say typical financing path, but the reality is that path has changed pretty dramatically, especially in the last 12 to 18 months. So the seed, you still only have the promise. You still got to make people believe. But at the A, what used to be based on product market fit is now based on that next level. You've got to be able to demonstrate scale in order to raise A dollars in this market. And so you've got to use your seed money to both establish product market fit and demonstrate scale. And we'll talk about the implications of that a little bit more. And then finally, by the time you're ready for a Series B, you've got to be an absolute slam dunk. And the reason for this is, there are many reasons for this, but the two biggest reasons that this is happening in the market is that all the later stage investors are sitting on a portfolio of assets that they've overpaid for in most likely cases, and there's no liquidity in the market, right? We talk about the occasional IPO here and there. If you probably just saw that Snap filed for an IPO confidentially without their numbers, in other words. So there's more liquidity coming, but until now, there's been no liquidity in the market. So you've got a bunch of investors who have too many board seats, have expensive assets, some troubled companies, and so if they're going to write another check in the next year, it's got to be an absolute slam dunk. So this is the dirty little secret of VC, especially A-stage investors, is that they are afraid of risk. There's nothing that they want to do except put money where they know they can make money. And so that's effectively the key between the seed and the Series A, is how do you address the fact that investors hate risk? Well, you eliminate it, of course. And that seems like an obvious statement, but what we find is that lots of seed stage companies focus on doing stuff, right? And they are doing stuff without a clear objective or goal in mind, and importantly, not enough goals and objectives in mind. And that's why when you think about the Series A, there are really 5 things that investors think about. They may have different names for all of these, but effectively there are 5 types of risk, and you've got to figure out how to eliminate them. There's product, there's team, there's market, there's go-to-market, and there's financial. We'll talk about each of those in turn, and obviously you're not going to figure out how to eliminate or reduce risk in all 5 of these areas, but I think it's really important to pick 3. Pick 3 that you can reduce or eliminate risk in, and pick the 3 that are the biggest question marks about your business. So if you're honest about it and you look at these 5 areas, you can probably pretty safely figure out which are the 3 that people outside the company have questions about, and those are the 3 to focus on between your seed and Series A. Let's talk about first product. Now, product is the most important one because without establishing product market fit, you can't even begin the conversation in most cases. So this is the one you got to focus on first, almost irrespective of where you are against all 5 of those risks that we outline. And usually the answer for people or when they ask, how do you know if you have product market fit, is you just know, right? I don't find that particularly helpful. I think that's necessary, but not sufficient. And so there are different questions that you could ask and metrics that you can look at to figure out whether you have product market fit. The first question to ask is, are you addressing an acute need? And what we mean by that is, are you addressing a need that somebody feels like they need to have the solution that you have, or you've convinced them of the need and they feel like they need the solution that you have, and it's amongst the top 2 or 3 things that they want to have addressed in their lives. So acute need is super important. The second thing that you want to focus on is engage users. Obviously, there was a period of time where collecting eyeballs and having them collected but not stick around got valued in some material way. That's no longer the case. You have to have highly engaged users. And finally, the flip side of that is while they're engaged, you have to be able to keep them, right? Which is low churn. And then finally, you've got to have predictable growth, right? You've got to have growth that is sustainable, that is economic, and that is going to scale over the course of time. So those are 4 key questions to ask about product. Acute need is something that can be created or something that's obvious. So these are 3 companies in our portfolio. The first is Honor. Honor is a home-based service for senior care. And the Honor team was very explicitly able to describe the fact that when your parents get old and you don't want to send them into a nursing home, like there are very few good alternatives. And there are already billions of dollars spent in this category. So the acute need here was pretty obvious. In the case of Primary, it was less obvious. Primary was started by 2 women out of diapers.com. And they saw from that experience that parents were actually looking for clothing for their kids that didn't have bling and logos and sayings on them. They just wanted basics that were really high quality. And they were able to convince us that there was an actual need in the market. This was not an obvious one by any means. And then finally, Building Connected is a B2B business. Building Connected basically provides software that enables construction companies to manage the RFP process. This was something that historically had been done with paper and Excel. And software had never been sold into this industry. So the market was didn't exist, but the pain or the acuteness of the pain was obvious because these commercial construction companies hired teams of people to do nothing but manage the RFP process. So again, different examples of demonstrating acute need. It can be done a number of different ways, but establishing that up front is super important. The second piece is engage users. There are a lot of ways, again, to measure this, but I find this pretty simple chart useful. So on the x-axis, you've got time, and on the y-axis, you've got the percent of your users that are active in any particular period. For a consumer application, you're probably looking at days or weeks. For an enterprise application, you might be looking at weeks or months. But the key is that if you look at any particular cohort, over the course of time, if the percentage of active users in the period flattens out at some reasonable level, that's a pretty good indication of product market fit. So this is just one cohort, but you'll look at cohort after cohort, and whenever that curve starts flattening out as opposed to decreasing, you can feel pretty good that you've got product market fit. So an example of this is an investment that we made in the Skim. This is data that looks at the Skim's average daily open rate per week since the time that they were founded to when we invested. And as you can see, in week 1, the average daily open rate was hovering close to 70%, but the powerful thing was it remained at close to 50%. The Skim is a media company that's first product was the email newsletter, and 50% open rates for an email newsletter that stayed that way over the course of time was kind of unheard of. And so when it came time for the Series A, we were fortunate that this chart looked exactly the same, but you could add 52 weeks on it. And so that made it clear that they had product market fit. They had to answer other questions about being in the newsletter business, but the product market fit question got addressed pretty well. Low churn was also something that they were able to demonstrate. Again, this is data from the first 15 weeks of the Skim. So this isn't a cohort, it's kind of on a monthly basis. And you can see that in month 1, they had 12% churn, and over the course of time, that churn dropped to approaching 2%. When we looked at this on a cohort basis and on an ongoing basis at the Series A, it was sub 2%. and consistently so for every single cohort. So again, really easy to look at this kind of data and convince people that you have product market fit. And then finally, an example of predictable growth. So this is data for Managed by Q, which is a service that helps offices manage their physical office space. So here is the first 12 months after launch, and you can see that they grew pretty nicely from a customer standpoint. Now, important here is that this wasn't all organic. It was about half word of mouth and half inside sales. But they had been able to demonstrate that they could repeat this on a month-over-month basis, and we raised the Series A very soon after that 12 months, based on the strength of this kind of growth. If we also looked obviously at churn and engagement of customers, and all of it kind of demonstrated that they had product market fit. So again, some very simple data can help you figure out whether you have product market fit. The second big risk area is team. And within the area of team, there are 4 key questions that people are looking to answer. 1, can you hire well? 2, are there any functions which are missing expertise? 3, is there a management gap anywhere in the team? And 4, has the company been intentional about the culture and the values that it wants to create? And at the Series A, again, all of these have to be addressed in some way. You already had a great founding team at the seed. So what have you done to prove that you can eliminate team risk at the Series A? Chime is a perfect example of this. And I would argue that at the Series A, Chime didn't actually have product market fit, but they had a great team and had addressed some of the other areas in the 5 areas of risk. So in the case of Chime, you've got the 2 founders, Chris and Ryan. Chime is a mobile banking company. Chris had been working in the financial services industry for a couple of decades. Ryan was a great technologist. And since the seed round, they added 2 key executives to the team, Shane to come run marketing and Melissa to come run growth. So if you think about the risks for a financial services company, you've got to have financial expertise because there's a lot of regulation and risk that goes into that business. You've got to have, if you're building a mobile product, you've got to have a technical team that can build that product. And if you're building a mobile product in today's world, you've got to have a team that can build an audience for that product. And so they were very credibly able to say that they addressed a bunch of functional areas and management areas in some important, with hiring in the team. And importantly, they did that in a way that emphasized to the investors that they cared about diversity from both a gender and a race standpoint. As you can see, a very diverse team relative to a lot of what you might see in the Valley. And that was communicated both through their hiring and through the values that they were able to spell out for investors, which is important given that Chime is a mobile banking company focused on a millennial audience. Market. There's 3 things to think about in the context of market. What's the addressable size, right? What are the actual customers that you can sell your product to, or the number of users that you can actually reach with your product? What does competition look like? And what is long-term differentiation? So a good example of a company that did this really well at the Series A in our portfolio is UpCounsel. UpCounsel is a marketplace for small businesses to get legal services. Addressable market size, enormous, because there's billions spent on legal every year. And the addressable component for them were companies that couldn't afford the big law firms and didn't want to rely on form-based legal help in the form, like LegalZoom. Right? There are entire categories like immigration, real estate, contract law, IP that require legal expertise that were being unaddressed by or inaccessible to a big set of customers. From a competition standpoint, it was the big firms and forms. And then from a long-term differentiation standpoint, they were building a marketplace which has the kind of natural benefits of marketplace models. But importantly, what they were doing also was building software that the individual lawyers could use to run their practices. So really creating lock-in amongst their customer base. And then finally is go-to-market. Go-to-market is kind of the best way to think about it is akin to your conversion funnel. So you start at the top and you've got marketing or acquisition, right? Can you attract potential customers? You've got sales and conversion. Can you turn those potential customers into actual customers? Customer success and retention. Can you keep those customers? And then finally, pricing or monetization, right? So this is how to think about go-to-market. And this tends to be the area that most Series A companies spend the least time on. And there's a big problem with that right now because, as I mentioned at the beginning, Series A requires demonstrating scale. And you can't demonstrate scale unless you've figured out and proven go-to-market. When we look at, and this ties also to team, which we talked about, in terms of team, sales and marketing tends to be the last place where people hire and develop expertise, and that often gets reflected when talking about go-to-market, that there's just that missing expertise in the company. The last area of risk is financial. And these three pieces are the key to financial risk. The business model, fairly obvious, unit economics, and then importantly, investor appetite. A lot of companies don't realize that their success in financing may have nothing to do with their actual business. So as an example, if you're trying to build a consumer-based, ad-driven consumer company right now, you're going to have a really hard time because most investors know that you need to have hundreds of millions of users in order to have those businesses scale. If you're trying to build a commerce business right now, there's a lot of dislike for those models because commerce businesses trade at 1 to 2 times revenue in the long term. So you have to get to tremendous scale in order to create a lot of value. If you're trying to build a hardware business right now, the last few years have demonstrated that hardware businesses are hard, right, and take real capital to get product out the door. So there's a lot of risk associated with hardware models. If you're trying to build an on-demand company in today's world relative to 2 years ago, you might want to think twice based on investor appetite. So that's it. Those are the 5 risks. And you've got to figure out whether you want to cross your fingers and hope for the best or whether you really want to focus on those risks and try to raise money from a position of strength. So if you've got 3 takeaways at all from this, Series A requires scale. There are 5 key risks. Pick 3 and work to eliminate and reduce them. Make sure you're spending your time productively, not just on 1, but on 3. Thanks. We're taking a couple questions.
Yeah, we have time for like 2.
2
questions.
questions.
There's a microphone like right there if somebody has.
Boom.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hi there. I was wondering how primary.com was able to convince you of their acute need.
Yeah, so it really stemmed from their founding story. So as I said, I hope everyone heard the question, how was primary.com able to convince us of their acute need? So the 2 founders had been executives at diapers.com, so they had seen the buying behavior of parents, and they had convinced us that there was a gap in the market for kids' clothing that had nothing on it that was high quality at an affordable price. And they kind of demonstrated that the high end, you've got brands like Janie and Jack and others that are kind of fashionable and expensive. And then you've got Carter's and the private label brands of Target and Walmart at the low end, which are cheap but really poor quality. So they were able to convince us, based on their past experience and the purchase behavior that they had seen, that there was this gap in the market.
I know this talk was about Series A, but how does some of this risk elimination apply to seed stage?
Yeah, so at the seed stage, as I said at the beginning, it's not about eliminating risk, it's about convincing people along 2 dimensions, around your team and around the opportunity. Because you don't have any data, you haven't eliminated any risk yet, so you've really got to convince somebody based on emotion that they should give you money, right? There has to be something about you and the opportunity that makes them believe that you're likely to be successful. It's all about belief at the seed stage.
Thank you.
Cool. That was it. Thank you very much, Satya. It's fantastic.
Our iTunes review of the week is from Thunderheart. If you're into technology and startups, you'd be wasting your time if you started anyplace else. Every week, you'll get the latest news on what's actually relevant.